Our fifth module is about marketing the urban destination. We will see that destination marketing is about managing attention and managing expectations. In our model, we have put destination marketing in between the shareholders' capacities and the market of origins of a tourist, consisting of the advent industry, influentials, and visitors. Well, there's a good reason why we have put destination marketing on this spot within the model. It is about connecting the visitors, about industry and influentials, to the destination. Now, whereas visitor management is more about actual visits, destination marketing is more about influencing the minds of the tourists. We will start with some definitions of city marketing. Urban destination marketing is in fact a part of the broader process of city marketing. There are plenty of definitions of city marketing, and we will only consider three relevant ones. The first one is more technical, and it describes city marketing as the market-focused operation of a communal organization, namely cities and their governments. And the aim is to achieve a common profiling to the outside world of all urban actors. And of importance within this definition are the words market-focused, common profiling of all urban actors, and the outside world. The second one is a definition used by the Flemish government, who simply see city marketing as a way to make sure that urban objectives are put into actions. And thirdly, a definition found in a local magazine is, although non-academic, quite to the point. City marketing is a tool that has roots within business practices and it is used in the urban battle. In order to understand the rise of city marketing and the latter definition of a business tool used in urban battle, we have to elaborate a little bit on the impact of globalization on cities. Globalization in a broad sense is a process that transforms local or regional things into global ones. This process takes place on both the economic as well as the technological, socio-cultural, and political level. The effect of globalization is that the world is becoming one society. It is more and more interdependent. Now, in a narrow sense, the same process is considered, except that it is limited to its economical aspects. Globalization is then about the integration of economies into one international economy through trade, foreign direct investment, capital flows, migration, and the spread of technology. Whatever it may, and whatever the definition is, whether it is the broad or the narrow sense, there is no doubt about the fact that the economy is a dominant force of global changes. Capital is more and more mobile, and it accumulates with dominant agents who live in global cities. And these global cities, such as New York, London, and Tokyo, they form an interconnected global society. Globalization is, by the way, not new. Already during the Middle Ages, there were processes of a world that is more and more interrelated to each other. However, the scale and speed of this phenomenon has increased exponentially during the end of the 20th century. And moreover, the whole world is now involved, not just some superpowers. Within a globalized world, cities are the nodes in the global network. And many authors suggest that there is a declining economic autonomy of the individual city, who has to go along in the global race of shifting capital to the most interesting places to invest. Cities are also places where the global service industry becomes more and more important. Cities have deindustrialized, and new economic developments within cities are situated mostly within consumption-related services. Within a globalized world, cities are also local markets for global products. Starbucks is a typical example of such global product. It is present in almost every local market now, even in Belgium since a few years. And Starbucks coffee is therefore seen as one of those typical what we call global brands, brands that are active all around the world globally, and they are active in every local market. Within a globalized economy, cities are also attraction points for global capital. And it is here that place marketing sets in. A high-quality, appealing image of a place is considered as important if you, as a city, want to attract capital. Typical strategic weapons in the global competition are the expansion of the cultural industry, the rise of the experience economy, and investments in urbanscapes. Now, as you can see on this slide, there is attention on the role and importance of cities within a global society. On the one hand, cities are part of a global network with limited power, but on the other hand, every city wants to be part of that network and become a network hub, where global capital that circulates from one city to the other is accumulated and invested within the local economy. This tension on the role and independence of cities is also part of an academic debate. Some people, like Thomas Friedman, believed that at the beginning of the 21st century, the world was flat. Richard Florida and many others, however, like Porter, they rather stipulated that the earth is not flat. In fact, it's spiky. They believe that the choice on the place to live and work is even far more important than it used to be. Nowadays, there are more than ever cities that matter within the global economy and cities that don't matter. Famous sociologists like Foucault or Thrift indeed believe that you have to live local to be a global citizen, and that our experience of place had thickened rather than thinned because of globalization. The paradox that an ongoing integration of the world economy implies for cities to ask themselves where their strong local assets are is called the global-local paradox. In general, there is no agreement on the importance of local and regional variety within a global economy, but most of the authors think that place matters even more nowadays than before globalization set in. And even Starbucks, a typecasted global brand, realizes the rising importance of a local touch. For instance, recently they opened a store that is not called Starbucks, but 15th Avenue Coffee and Tea, inspired by Starbucks. This reflects the neighborhood in which the shop is located. Importantly, for tourism, globalization has had three impacts, and that's why we call it the new urban tourism. It's the urban tourism that exists since globalization. Firstly, cities are travel nodes of a global and social network. Secondly, urban leisure and tourism have become a means to attract capital that has nothing to do with leisure or tourism. The general idea is that a place that has great recreational and tourist opportunities is also a great place to live, and hence a great place to attract talented people and to make money. And finally, cities have become places of consumption of leisurely or touristic activities. And all this has led to the fact that in most cities, urban tourism is characterized by global brands, by homogenized symbols that are juxtaposed with heterogeneous examples of locally distinctive products for experience. And as was stressed in the previous slides, cities want to attract capital in order to develop their local economy. And to do so, they need to create high appealing images and fight the global competition of attention. The message for cities to investors and other target groups nowadays is to raise awareness. The principal aims of urban imaging strategies is indeed that cities have to become smarter if they want to attract the four segments of city marketing: residents, visitors, brains, companies. Within the realm of tourism, city marketing is about attracting tourism expenditures, generating employment in the tourism industry, fostering positive images for potential investors in the region, and providing an urban environment that is nice to live and work in, and where there are a lot of clean service industries, such as tourism. The target is then, in most cases, to maximize the number of visitors, to focus on particular types of visitors, or to increase the volume of visitors at low periods. So city marketing is about trying to influence locational choices. Cities have to become visual and they have to put themselves on the map. But how do you do that, and how does urban imaging work? Now, traditionally, there are three ways to raise awareness on your city. The first one is to invest in the hardware of the city. We're not just talking about roads, but about landmarks, about pieces of art, architecture, everything that is remarkable. The picture you see here is the Angel of North, a 57 meters wide statue in the Newcastle area. And the statue was part of the redevelopment of Newcastle, which was a former coal mining city that deteriorated, and according to the Lonely Planet in '90, it was a place to avoid. There are plenty of other examples of world-famous landmarks that mark a city, such as the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, or the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. Or imagine this one. It's an unexisting landmark in the city of Antwerp. Quite sure this would put Antwerp on the map of must-see skylines. Of course, a landmark is not the only hardware element in the city that can give a city a unique face. When seeing the image on this screen, most of the people know quite well what city we are talking about. This type of travel card pictures that are showing city icons, however, not only can help the city to put itself on the map as a visual representation that is necessary in the minds of people, it also raises expectations about the city. Tourism is recreation. It is a conservative activity where you want to recreate, relive, review images. As a tourist, you want to check whether these images are consistent with reality. And this type of photographic inspection is a typical aspect of urban tourism marketing, where you have to manage expectations that are raised through this type of pictures. And a final note on the hardware of a city is the idea that contesting the city gaze by interventions in public space, or by de- and recomposing world-famous city icons, as shown on this picture, is also a way to raise awareness of cities. The contestation of city images by this type of actions not only illustrates the association of the city with certain elements, it also implies the presence of a cultural substream and hence a wide variety of cultures and creativity. This variety of cultures and creativity is part of the software of a city, and investing in the software is a second major strategy to raise awareness on and attention to the city. Software is more about the soft aspects of the city, not the artifacts, but the climate, the atmosphere, the education, etc. One of the most famous city marketeers, Richard Florida, stresses the importance of the presence of a creative class in the city. To him, creativity is a function of the presence of so-called high bohemians, gays, artists, musicians, high-tech workers. He speaks about the 3 T's: technology, talent, and tolerance. Technology, talent, and tolerance are the tools to attract the 4 target groups of destination marketing. And to Florida, a creative city has a high population density, is diverse, and is knowledge-driven. A good case is the city of Essen. Essen was the economic heart of Western Germany thanks to the coal mining and steel industry. It had 23 mines, and they all closed down. Essen was not a town, but an amalgam of neighborhoods that had been built not by urban but by industrial needs. It has no city center, its urban layout is disastrous, and after all, the mines closed down and many steel factories were abandoned. The city of Essen was factually non-existent. In 1972, Essen got a university, but the reaction of the business people was, "We don't need brains, we need muscles." Lots of land areas were polluted, the number of residents kept on declining, and there was a lot of unemployment, and the population was very multicultural. All over the world there are many cases of this type of cities, but Essen chose to do something about it. Essen was the home base of the Eiffel Tower of the Ruhr area, the second Zollverein. The Zollverein, with its Bauhaus style, became UNESCO World Heritage, and there was a lot of investment in culture and education. This Zollverein now houses the Ruhr Triennale, the Classic Festival Ruhr, a design academy, an art academy, and many others. It is one of the main cultural hotspots in the Ruhr area and even in Western Germany. And there were of course investments in the hardware, but the focus was to get more creativity in the city, and by doing so they also hope to attract more tourists. And indeed, the Zollverein is now a major tourist attraction. The third kind of strategies are those related to the mindware. This perspective is based on the idea that attachment to a place is like the love between people. It is hard to describe, but once you experience it, you understand what it is. Charles Landry, another world-famous city marketeer, describes the mindware as the human dynamics of a place, its connections and relationships, as well as atmosphere. It is the city in your head. It's about the details that play a role and that determine your place in the global race of reputation. According to Landry, a smart urban government is a government that is able to mobilize its citizens and to help them to realize their dreams, ideas, and desires. He firmly believes that creativity is not about having a cultural elite, as Richard Florida does, but mindware is about ordinary people who do extraordinary things. In the tourism context, it is important to note that there are nowadays a lot of tourist destinations, urban destinations, who are marketing themselves on this line of mindware. And often it is done by campaigns such as I Love New York or I Amsterdam. But cities like Berlin believe that their atmosphere of creativity and of ordinary people creating a diverse and multi-layered city is their best way of making tourists care about and love of the city of Berlin. The third chapter is about some strategies that you can apply when you want to brand and market a city from a tourist perspective. A traditional marketing model of place marketing is the one with the 4 P's: the product, price, place, and promotion. And a good marketing approach requires strategies on all 4 P's. The product can be improved by investing in the hard, the soft, or the mindware of the city. Pricing strategies can be about money, and a good example here is the case of Bologna, where their entire tourism marketing budget went to the musea, who all became free. You don't have to pay now for any museum in Bologna. Pricing, however, can also be more implicit in a tourism context. It can be about what you need to undertake to enjoy something. So we are talking about accessibility, about troubles, about times, and so on. The P of place is about the distribution policy. How accessible are the tourist products? How many info points are there, etc. And finally, the P of promotion or communication is about telling your target groups what you're doing to make sure that you will fulfill all the promises that you made. Now, the marketing mix by the 4 P's is a rather classical one, and although world famous, it is not that often used by destination marketing organizations. This model of the World Tourism Organization is another interesting one. Although it is about branding and the strategic phases within the branding process, and despite the fact that it is incomplete, it gives quite a good overview on how you can market a destination in practice. You can start with every phase of the circle, but for the sake of clarity, we start with the destination strategic direction phase. In this phase, you have to decide where you want to go to with the destination and who are your target groups. And this is even beyond the branding and marketing process and activities. It is about the destination as a whole. However, the fact that this is part of this model shows that a good branding and marketing strategy has to be holistic. In the second phase, once you have set your directions and decided upon your target groups, you have to start asking yourselves, how are we being perceived by these groups? What do people think of us? What do they associate with us? Which feelings do they have when they hear or think of our destination? Etc. For the destination Flanders, for instance, we know that the brand Flanders has no connotation in many markets, except maybe Ned Flanders of The Simpsons. And in some other markets, the brand Flanders is even seen as a negative one, due to all the language fights, etc. However, does this mean you cannot see Flanders or any other destination as a brand? No, it doesn't, of course not. It only means that you have to work hard to raise perceptions, and that you have to brand and market the destination in a smart way. So that is when the actual marketing begins. Once the research phase is over, you have to ask yourself what things you want to relate with your brand. Here you have to be aspirational, meaning that you want to set a direction, a future vision on the associations with the brand, and so on. This phase, the brand identity development, is about relating the correct attributes and values to your brand, pinpointing the right personality to your brand, determining the value proposition, capturing the brand essence. In short, it is about positioning. In the fourth phase, you will start designing the brand, and this model suggests it is only about the package of the message, such as a brand name, a logo, taglines, typography, colors, forms, tone of voice, applications, but in fact it has to go much further. As a destination, you need to decide upon the themes you want to develop and to promote touristically. On the product lines, the stories, the experiences, the events, the projects you want to develop, etc. In the fifth phase, marketing is about communicating the message, which means choosing the right communication channels and media for each of the target groups, knowing how you will engage with the communities within your target groups, the conversation you want to fuel, the campaigns you want to undertake above and below the line, the way you will distribute content, and finally, how you will enhance conversion. The last phase is about managing the brand, and here we are, in fact, on the issue of visitor management. So, in short, we are talking about setting the general strategy, market research, then you position the brand and the destination, then you design the brand by defining the package of the message and by defining the themes, the stories, the experience, the product lines, the projects and events that are going to be developed. Then you plan on the communication channels, the communities, conversation, campaigns, the content, and the conversion. That's the 6 C's of communication. And finally, it is about visitor management. So, once you have a general strategy and visitor profiles, you have to position the destination, and this aspect will be dealt with a little bit more in detail. Designing the brand, communication are topics of other more specific classes. Visitor management we already dealt with in earlier class. When you take a more in-depth look at the phase of positioning a city brand, the rules of city branding are quite similar as to any other brand marketing activity. Although compared to product brand positioning, the intensity of the experience is much more extreme with cities than with products, both positive and negative. And there are therefore 3 things we have to realize. Firstly, when you're identifying the brand identity and brand position, it is important that the positioning connects closely to what a city can bear and what it can actually provide. In other words, you have to know and respect your city DNA, the own logic that distinguishes a city, the eigenfrequency that makes a city vibrant on its own. This connection of the brand identity with the city DNA has to do with the fact that place consumers want experiences that are long-lasting or even permanent and not phony or staged as we saw in earlier models. We're talking about authenticity. And although most people know the theory, there are plenty of bad examples. This example is almost world famous. It is about the city of Zutphen in Holland. Zutphen in Holland positioned itself as the capital of chocolate. However, it had no real chocolate industry, nor could it ever compete to the true chocolate destinations such as Belgium or Switzerland. Other bad examples would be, for instance, to position Antwerp as the capital of sports, Rotterdam as the heritage place, or Bruges as a place full of creative industries. By not taking your own DNA enough into account when setting out your aspirations with the brand essence and value propositions, you will, in the end, even lose visitors. There are, however, also many great examples of a perfect fit between the DNA and the positioning. The picture on the left is taken in Clute in Texas, and Clute suffers from a mosquito invasion every summer, and they celebrate it every year with the Great Texas Mosquito Festival. The festival has existed over more than 30 years now, and draws over 20,000 visitors every year. And the picture on the right is taken in International Falls in Minnesota. It is the coldest place in the USA with an average year temperature of 2 degrees Celsius, and they have positioned themselves as Icebox of the nation. And since more than 30 years there are the Icebox days where you can go for a blizzard run or do some frozen turkey bowling. A second aspect of positioning a city brand is the most important rule of all: be different. Being different is, however, easier said than done. When you take a look at the main shopping streets of Manchester, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Basel, they are all quite similar. There will be only very limited differences. And almost every European city that wants to be taken seriously has some train stations, shopping malls, knowledge or cultural institutions that are all looking quite familiar. Now look at those three pictures. 3 cities within a 50-kilometer range within Flanders all have an opera house. How can you position yourself if you're not unique, if you as a city has the same assets as other cities? Let's take a look at the positioning strategies of 4 heritage cities in Flanders a couple of years ago. Bruges, as a World Heritage City, can rightly claim the unique proposition that the entirety of the inner city is World Heritage. However, it also claims living culture and intimacy. Ghent, for instance, wants to be an exciting culture city that is lively, young and innovative, a city of knowledge and culture. Mechelen wants to bring monuments to life, while Leuven is ages old but still alive and kicking. Now each of these propositions stresses culture or heritage on the one hand and the lively atmosphere right now on the other hand. Now what we miss here clearly is uniqueness. Why, as a visitor, would I still go to Ghent if they are more or less similarly positioned as Bruges or as Mechelen or as Leuven? Kolb suggests several positioning strategies for urban destinations, each of them with their own promotional message. He distinguishes unique product features, superior quality of tourism services, the rather vague unique benefits, and the existence of special events. Now, the fact that most positionings in city marketing are rather weak has to do with the well-known problem that is called the sales marketing paradox. From a sales perspective, most decision makers will emphasize the strong points of their city. For instance, Rotterdam is a harbor city. But they tend to forget that there are many harbor cities such as Hamburg or Antwerp. And from a marketing perspective, the stress is far more on differentiation. A harbor city is not a good choice because it is not unique enough. And the final aspect is that your brand has to evoke emotions with the customer. That is why we talk about brand personalities, value propositions, and brand essence. Every positioning should be user-centric. That's why Italo Calvino once said that you do not love a city because of the things that are being stressed by salespeople, the 7 or 77 attractions, but because it touches your emotions, or as he stated it, it appeals to your needs and desires. An international best practice that illustrates all 3 guidelines of positioning a city also towards tourists is the showcase of Yubari in Japan. Yubari was a mining city in the Hokkaido region, and one mine after the other closed down. People started to leave the village, and in the end they invested in tourism, but even that failed and the city went bankrupt. Then they hired Charles Landry, the famous city marketeer, in order to find something to help the city to go up again. And he and his team found out that Yubari had the lowest divorce rate in the whole of Japan, and that's why they came up with the idea that Yubari is a city with no money but love. And this powerful idea led to the generation of all types of activities, products, services, and Yubari came into the news all over the country on almost every network. And economically, the city is now on its way back again. Now this example clearly illustrates that positioning your brand on an authentic aspect of the city, even whether it's a small part in the mindware of your DNA, that this can work for finding a great positioning. It also illustrates that you have to be different, and it also illustrates that your value proposition has to be emotional. It is about love, which is of course very appealing for human beings. The final chapter is about some limitation. There are several limitations to the city marketing approach. First of all, the product of a city is very complex. It is diverse. A place product is diverse, but a marketed product is just a composite view of the place product, with little understanding of the diversity of services and products being sold by the tourism industry. And therefore, destination marketing organizations are unable to market a precise product because they have to reduce reality by just stressing several aspects. A city product is also never finished, nor is it ever new, and it is historical unity. Adaptations to the place consumer cannot always be done quickly, in contrast to other normal products. Secondly, there is the governmental aspect. Many governmental levels are involved or influence each other, and they all manage the brand. The way Antwerp markets itself touristically has to be in line with the marketing of Flanders, which has to be in line itself with how Destination Europe is marketed. The best city destination marketing campaigns, such as I Love New York or I Amsterdam, they have been successful because all politicians supported the campaign, and also because there was one central marketing unit with quite a lot of power. Because in city marketing and city tourism marketing, there are many stakeholders involved, and they all have to be consulted to ask how they want their region to be sold. So many stakeholders, so many opinions. Now, this type of involvement is quite normal because a lot of tax money is put into it, which makes it susceptible to evaluation and legitimacy procedures. However, city marketing sometimes needs tough decisions, clear, innovative, sharp choices that require vision and leadership. And city marketing also needs consistency on the long term. However, after election, strategies are often adjusted, which is not always beneficial to the destination. If these preconditions are not set into place, positioning is often ambiguous, communication is rather inefficient. And finally, the tourist himself is a sophisticated consumer with different and varied patterns of behavior and sources of information, and therefore city marketing is a very complex process with a multitude of communication channels. Nowadays, with social media, there is even less control on the message than there was a few years ago, which is why the urban strategies to invest in hard, soft and mindware that are supporting the unique brand, well, these strategies are becoming more and more crucial in the global battle for tourist attention and in the management of their expectations.